Welcome and thank you for joining in to our final session of the day, which is our end of day discussion on how the virtual summit has gone. I'm delighted to be joined by several guests for this one. We've got about an hour to talk to you, to find out what was good, what we've learnt, and how the future looks. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Graziella Fake. Welcome, Graziella. Josh Philpott joins us. I think you may have seen him if you've been covering a lot of our sessions over here. Toby Townrow, welcome, Toby. And Nick Paul also joins us as our guest to sit on the panel and have a discussion. But of course, we've got someone very important to introduce you to, our co-host, or my co-host and your co-host on this event, Paul Mussell. Paul, welcome. How are you?
I am very well, Dan. I've had an amazing day. I became appointed last-minute host when Clem couldn't be with us today because of his match of the day commitments, his football-focused commitments. So yeah, but had an amazing day. Been really impressed by over the 3 days about the quality of the content, and I know that you were hoping that we'd just pick out one highlight from today. It's a real struggle to do that, but I have to say, what's going on in Chengdu? If you didn't see the Chengdu presentation from Mr. Wang and what's going on there ahead of the student games for 2021. Really good stuff going on there, particularly if you're a supplier. There's some great opportunities there.
What sticks out in your mind with it? Because obviously I've not seen that one yet.
It's the scale of it, and it's also the pace of it, because normally a major event, as you know, will have years of planning, and they're putting this thing together in just such a scary timescale. So that's the thing, and it's also mirrored as well in other conversations we've had. We had the last session was about the Middle East and how, again, places like NEOM that are really focusing in on well-being and getting the populations healthy, and that certainly came through as well.
Graziella, if I just jump into you as I introduced you first, how are you and how much have you enjoyed the summit? Because I know you've been across the last few days, so we're at the end of the third day now. So many items and subjects to discuss. We've certainly got time to do that, but what stood out for you?
Gosh, if I could be collective about it, I think one of the things was the excellence of the people that were present. And if I can echo a bit of what Paul said, I mean, I just think the summit itself was such a focal and pinnacle point to bring people together to talk about some of their fears, really. You know, I mean, when you came together in this last period, it was all about legacy making, and it was also about looking at the mitigation of risk and change management, because it boils down to, we really want these events to be successful. And across all of the sports and everything that was represented, that was the clearest message. And you know, not only from the panels that I got to host, but also from every single presentation. I heard your presentation was an absolute killer today, going on about legacy making and, you know, how we're going to get through things. And really, I think the story is just continued through the thread of the excellence of every single speaker.
I think that's one thing that we can take away from this. This is what people needed to hear, isn't it? How we can keep, well, everyone has got their plans in place, but we're getting ideas, we're getting so much interest, the passion's still there for all sports. I think everybody really just wants to do everything they can to keep it going.
I think one of the strongest things was that, you know, just to continuously keep hearing that sport's what we need to rebuild, and you know, it is the essence of rebuilding that connection of social connectivity for the economy as well. So every economy is looking to build itself, and sport's going to be one of those fundamentals. That event, you know, the events that we can hold, the events, the things that you've done here. I mean, I think it's just amazing to have brought so many people together on this platform.
Josh, I'll head over to you now. You're back by popular demand. You like these panel discussions at the end of the day, don't you?
I do enjoy them, Diana, because I think the to and the fro and getting into it is part of the value of these days and these conferences. So nice to be invited back and nice to be here.
What have you learned?
I think today was almost stripping back to the basics of, I mentioned it yesterday a little bit, but just the human condition and that tactile ability to interact and engage with other people and engage with content. So I think one of the big things that came out today, and I should say as a bit of an aside, I found today quite challenging because I think there were 3 of the sessions that I wanted to be at two at the same time. So I think I've got a bit of follow up to do on the weekend. But just the discussion around the content and how it's different content now from actually just watching people run around a racetrack, for example, or playing the game. It's peeling back the facade and understanding a little bit more about the human condition. So the Special Olympics yesterday, the new content around what we're doing with motorsport, I just found it really interesting that the human element has almost come further to the fore and become much more important, and probably a little bit more of the reason why we love sport and we love major events.
Yeah, that was something that really interested me, and we can all have a discussion on that in a moment. But Josh, obviously the portal opens at the weekend and it will be up there for another week. So anything you haven't been able to see, you'll be able to watch on catch up. And that's the same for anyone that's tuning in to the panel now. Toby, if I could move on to you, what stood out for you?
First, I should probably say this is my first event with MEI and first dipping our toe into this market. So if you're asking me what I learned, it's like everything. So I can't be too specific. And also, I think just touching on what Graziella said earlier on about just the return of it is kind of like a really good touchstone for things getting better. And I actually said the same thing to my wife when the cricket came on the news last night. That it was brilliant because it was exactly like it used to be. No one was there. The weather was dreadful. And hardly any cricket got played, and England lost an early wicket. So it was so comforting. It was exactly like cricket should be. So that was sort of proof of that pudding. In terms of today, I've also found it a bit of a challenge because I also did this morning I was on daddy daycare, so I was kind of trying to manage homework and a very small child and listening to what people were saying. I'm a massive rugby fan. I'm based in Wales, and so of course I went straight for the Rugby World Cup session with the guys from EY this morning, and I thought that was a really interesting session because they had loads of data and there was some really interesting stuff around fan engagement, which I really liked because it was really good to hear how many people had come over to Japan for the first time. I'm a massive Japan fan. I speak a bit of Japanese, so I couldn't get there myself. I was absolutely gutted, but it was really good to hear how many people were experiencing for the first time, and some data around that because I had some anecdotes. Some people had come back, and some friends of mine had gone, and they could see what I was going on about because I've been there 3 times and I've always evangelized about the place. Yeah. And it was good to see that that's actually been reflected in some of that data, but also how many, I think it was something like 75% of local people who went to the games were experiencing rugby for the first time. So the data that came out of that event showed that it did what it wanted to do, which was to actually grow the sport in a place where it hadn't previously been held, and so to actually hear some evidence around that was really good. I really enjoyed that.
Fantastic. And Nick, obviously you've been waiting in the wings there, I'm afraid, but great to see you again. What stood out for you today?
I think from the overall event, I just think that being able to just shift online has been great. It's opened up the opportunity for so many more people to be involved. I've got colleagues over in Canada who are glued to it as well. So I think that's been a majorly important thing. In terms of things that have come out of the meetings, I was fortunate enough to be on a panel yesterday, and Rugby League World Cup were involved as well. And I had a great chat with Tracy from Rugby League World Cup, and we were trying to fit some more of the story about their legacy issues or the legacy program they're putting in place. But unfortunately, the session was cut short slightly. But what they're doing is amazing. So rugby league, as most people will know, is very much a real man sport. And one of the key things they're focusing on is actually going out to the community and working with the young players just to make sure their mental well-being is in a good shape, and to let them know it's okay to say they're not okay. And I think that's just a really positive way that the world is moving, and sport is becoming more in tune with how the world works. So I think that was great, and definitely if you get a chance, just search what they're doing, because they've got some ex-players who are going around and actually running workshops with groups of kids, and I think that's just such a really powerful thing that they're doing, and I think they should be very proud of it.
I think one of the things that's come out, isn't it, Nick, and I'm sure this is reflected in everyone's sessions, is that we're seeing a couple of the interesting things came out of your comments there, is we've got this almost, although we're all sitting separately and not able to get together, we're almost as though we've all come together even more so. And sport, even though it's not happening, is still doing that. I just wondered what everyone's thoughts are on that.
I was thinking, Paul, that there's what legacy means is probably different to what it meant 3 months ago. So there's that deeper tie, and there's deeper content opportunities and different expectations now, I think, as well. So certainly I think that evolution of what legacy means and the footprint you leave and the tentacles from your event into community, into content, and how it's passed on if you're going from an Olympics to an Olympics, or from one event 1 year to another year, and how that transitions and leaves that tail, I think will be something that people are grappling with, and leveraging opportunities for a long time to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I think one of the sessions that I had yesterday, something that became quite clear is that because we're not traveling, in fact, that might have been with you, Josh, we're not traveling as much. We're not jumping on, we're all used to jumping on planes. I'm assuming most of us are. And we're rushing. We're going to one event to another. We're traveling. Whereas now we've been at home, we've had a lot more time to just sit, think, read, and actually absorb everything that's going on. So we've stepped back a little bit. So we're looking out for each other more. So I think, Nick, you touched on the mental health issues. I think that's something that's really become apparent, that's important. And people are realizing that actually it's okay to say, look, I'm struggling a little bit, and here's a helping hand, here's a hand to support you, which I think can only be for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that not just that, but I think the world has changed so drastically in the last sort of 15 years that social media has come to the fore. So most people's opinions are formed a lot through social media. And obviously the millennials have become almost the thought leaders by default. So the whole woke environment has become very much to the fore. And I think that this time's allowed us to digest how the world's moving, and how sport has to become entwined in it and find its place. And certainly that seems to be happening at quite a pace now, especially with what we're saying about mental health, but also with obviously Black Lives Matter campaign. Who would have thought that the Premiership football matches would start with a political process or a political standpoint? It's unheard of. We're in very, very different times, and sport obviously has to now take the lead.
I think there's also an element where you've got people are almost interacting with each other in a slightly different way, and I don't just mean the virtual way that we're doing now, but I also mean in terms of the way that you're actually having meetings has changed a bit in terms of how you discuss stuff. It seems to have got a little bit less kind of formal, and so if, as has happened not just to me but other people, and we've seen it on TV when kids come in because you haven't got a choice, you've got to get on with it, and it's suddenly with someone saying, oh, where's can I have pepper on or whatever, all of that seems to kind of has broken the ice a little bit, I think, with relationships. I think I know more about other people's kids that I might be having my first or second meeting with than I ever would have before. I think that's great. I think that's really good, because I think it just helps cement those relationships, and hopefully we'll get the wheels of things moving quicker and so on. So.
I think it makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. I mean, I've had today 2 dogs and a man in his dressing gown. That would normally happen.
Did you know who that was?
It's something that you've all kind of mentioned. I think that's really fascinating, because obviously with our area at the Optimisation Hub, it's all about athlete health, mental health and well-being, and the mitigation of risk in events. And with a background that I've got in both forensics, organisational and sports psychology, this song sheet that I'm hearing throughout the conference itself and through the summit, and the things that we've been hearing from other people, it all boils down to, and I think each one of you has touched upon that, and it's something that really strikes a chord with me. When I was listening to everything, it comes down to those simplistic factors. It went missing a long time ago for sport, because we professionalized and events became about, the finance and, being able to grow something that reconnected us to an economy that, we grew sport from. But everything that's coming out of this particular post-COVID pivot seems to be the 2 areas that come out and emerge. And I was able to run 2 panels on those areas. And one was diversity and inclusion, and to make sure everybody had access. And the other was mental health and well-being. And, sport went a long way from that for quite a while. And we had this, inverted sense of athletes as gladiators and the sports environment as one that was about ownership. And we were just churning and burning people. Whereas we seem to have come back to, we can't do that anymore. We really have to respect what it's all about. And so to hear things that the Rugby League World Cup and, the rugby league teams are doing, and that to me is like music to my ears. And even listening to legacy making, when you get down to legacy making, people are saying diversity inclusion is really important. The way we have fan engagement, the way we deal with people, even in esports, it's become so very relevant. And you consider every single speaker has actually touched upon those areas. And that's the one chord that struck with me. And I've got to say, with the team that I have that are global, and the 2 panels, in one panel we had 6 countries, another panel we had 5 countries, and we were privileged to bring our clients to those panels, but also privileged to listen to people saying the same thing and thinking, this is almost fortuitous, because it's brought us back to what's really important, and that's human connection, doing the things we love to do, doing what sport's great at doing, but back to the fundamentals of how can we make it healthy.
Take that point out, because I think that's a marvelous point, and it's been an education for me more than most other conferences, is just the sheer scale attached to these events. And there's the operational and infrastructure scale of what we're talking about. Then there's the content broadcast reach to many of them, but then just the amount of people it touches and affects in a positive way, and just the ecosystem. So I think the last couple of days, that's probably another thing I've heard, just how much the flow on, and almost the butterfly wings or the ripple in the water, whatever metaphor you want to use, how much it touches, and then how much it can actually do something positive. So I think, there seems to be a bit of a hunger just for the on-field experience, but I think it's something that we'll all appreciate a little bit more as well, is the off-field and just the intangible stuff that we're all probably craving just to go and be part of.
I recall when I first sort of got into that sports psych area, it was about sport builds society, sport builds communities. That was 30 years ago, And I think
there's definitely a massive part of takeaway, I think, to be done, and that's come through all of the sessions. One of the things that's been a debate sort of on the social media around the event, and I know it's been talked about as well in panels, is how we as delegates, and we've been all of us fortunate enough to speak or contribute as well, how we feel about being in this world, in this virtual world, as opposed to where we would all get together and press flesh and meet and greet. What are you? I'm interested in each of you. Perhaps I can start with you, Nick. Interested in your take on that virtual event versus the physical event, because we're likely, aren't we, to be in this sort of space for for going forward. Hey, well done, Josh. You win the child prize.
This is Mariska, everyone who comes and says hello.
We did one of the sessions. I'm not sure it was your session, Nick. Oh, hi. I'm not sure if it was one of your sessions, Nick, yesterday, but we had a very surprised wife or partner come into a session where she clearly didn't realise that her partner was. It was like,
yeah. So we get special guests.
Yeah, special guest.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but going back to your point on the shift towards virtual, I think that for all events, it becomes crucial that they keep their communities together. And when we do shift back to live, then I don't think any major event will ever be just live. They'll have to twin it digitally. And I think that in a way that sort of makes me think about another point, in that, could you imagine a world now where the internet went down in the stadium or around the stadium? It literally would decimate the event. And I think that just shows you how far we've come. And I think there was a television revolution sort of 20, 30 years ago. That brought all the sports forward. That ploughed huge amounts of money in, obviously led by America, and then you've got the Premiership over here. And I think now that the same things happen with digital and the digital assets, and you look at the Premiership, how they go out and they've opened up new markets. So now they don't care how many people in the stadium. They need to know how many eyes are watching in the Asian communities. So yeah, I mean, virtual is huge because it brings more eyeballs. And that's what sponsors want, and that's what sponsors get. So yeah, I think virtual is great, and it's just about organisers just concentrating on delivering the same service, or allowing their attendees and people who are participating in the event to realise the same objectives, to reach those same conclusions, be it online or live. So I think MEI credit, you've done a great job with this event, and I think all of us have felt very privileged to be part of it, and we've all learned loads and been involved in lots of great conversations. So thank you to MEI.
Toby, what do you think about that? We've not heard from you.
Yes, so obviously it being my first event, I don't know what it was like before, but I'm guessing it's like other events I've been to. Yeah, it swings and roundabouts for me. I mean, there's some really a bit like I think Diana, the point you were mentioning earlier about sort of allowing us to sort of not be, you can do other things as well. So you can either get some work done, or I'm at home with my kids whilst this event is going on, and that's a great thing to be celebrated. On the flip side, there's still great energy when you're in a room with people and you get a conversation going and all that kind of stuff, and I kind of miss that, if I'm honest.
I think everybody wants that, don't they? Because let's face it, we still want to get back to that. But I think I'll just pick up on your point, Nick. During my session earlier on motorsport and broadcast, I had Charles Balkan, who's the head of projects at IMG Productions. So I asked him, with the digital way that we can do stuff, everyone can pick up their mobile phone and film something at an event. How is that affecting the broadcasters? What are they thinking about that? Is that a worry? Because obviously broadcasts will then become less and less. And he said, absolutely no, because there's enough room for both. And actually, it's a fantastic additional bonus, and it's growing the fan base and it's growing the numbers.
And I think an event like this, you could run both. So there's no reason why you couldn't run a version of this event, say next year, hopefully, or next year when we're all back to some kind of normality. You run the event as normal, but you have this as well, and so people who couldn't make the event normally could dip into a session, maybe still connect with the people that are there, and so on. So people have got the option. I think that's probably the learning of this will probably move that forward.
Paul,
that's definitely the direction that things are going, where we're going to move from virtual into hybrid, and it will definitely be that sort of package. I think, Josh, I heard a comment, somebody said that one of the things you enjoyed, and if it wasn't attributed to you, apologies, the fact that, you're in a conference normally, we head back to a hotel, get in a bar, have a couple of friendly drinks, but on this occasion, we're all actually able to go back into our own homes. Given all the travel we all do, is no bad thing.
Yeah, I'll still miss the drink after, but at the same time, there's just the stark reality of the world, isn't it? There's probably access to more talent because it's easier to fit it in your diary. So, Diana, for example, cutting time out of your career and all the stuff that you're doing, it's probably easier for you and then to facilitate. So you could argue in this sort of mode that the standard goes up because there's less costs of flying people in, there's less trying to move calendars around. So if you get good momentum around this, there's going to be access to really good content that is just delivered in a different way. I agree with what you're saying, Paul, as well, is it's not one or the other. It's that hybrid now of what's better tomorrow, which will be continual evolution. Because I still think the portal that we've all been operating off for a first up event has been excellent. And if this is the start point, and then the facilitation around the meeting hub, for example, and there's more work and more thought and more feedback into that, then it's still going to drive more outcomes, because ultimately I think we all want to learn, we all want to meet people, but at the same time there's the financial output that's required of making money for our business. So as long as there's the continual evolution around those aspects, overlaid with a fair bit of enjoyment, because that's part of being, major events. That's part of the fun of it all and the attraction to the event. Because, plenty of people can earn lots more money in other places, but it's not major events. So I think, the personality of what we get to do here and how we do it, that's going to evolve it as well, which is part of the fun, part of the journey.
Do you think that with a platform such as this, and we've obviously got we've had the meeting hub on the platform for people to connect and communicate and make connections, do you think it's slightly easier doing it this way as opposed to face? Because still, I think some people are still quite reserved in going up and talking to someone. But if you can make the connection and get straight to them and then have a conversation, do you think that benefits the relationships? Graziella, what do you think?
I was just listening to what Josh was saying, and I just wanted to carry on from that. I've got a pro and a con there, because I think that you can, but it's almost there's nothing about that kind of bumping into people and being in a room. I enjoyed both this virtual kind of atmosphere to be able to connect with people. So coming out of the events, I had all these meeting requests, but I also had LinkedIn requests immediately. And you get to meet this network, and it happens really quickly and it's immediate. And I took what Josh said last night, because I listened to it and I thought, yeah, it's fantastic. You get to be here, with one of the panels. We had Pakistan, we had Kosovo, we had, Jamaica, we had the UK, we had Australia, and we had New Zealand in there. So you had all these people in an event together. But there's something about walking around a room and meeting with people and sitting down over a 4-day period. And I also have to draw it a little bit further and think about all those people who depend upon events. So when you listened, and I was listening intently to the Rugby World Cup and what did we learn from it today? And, the key data was, where did people go, not just while they were at the event, but where did they go around the event? Because all of that becomes part of the social context of what the event's about. So, yes, it's great to meet with people. I mean, I love this, because I love what we've been able to do in our business. We've got 100 people online learning from us all around the world. We've got athletes from one region to another. They get to mix and they get to talk together. But what about those other little nuances that happen when you're just in person? So I think there are other connections that we as human beings strive for. And being a behaviorist, I think we can't replace what we get in person with a virtual environment. I think it enhances it. I think, yes, it's great to get to know people, but I think it's a bit more impersonal. And you really have to make more of an effort to get personal. Where it's like this, we can eyeball each other and we're doing that. But sometimes you get a bit lazy online, I think. So, when you're in front of someone, you do have to really get to know them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no thing there, is there?
I was going to say, one of the other thing that's really been interesting from a point of view of us presenting this, the content of the event on this on-air platform, is that there's been a real eye-opener, I think, for people who have presented in this way, who've been really skilled at being in a live environment, but then in this virtual environment find themselves, and this probably to your point as a behaviourist, Graziella, you've probably got better insight into this, how people can do a fantastic job live, but then when you put them into this environment, they've got to look in a little tiny camera on the top of their laptop. It's completely alien. And we had a number of occasions where speakers or panelists were sort of, not quite sure where to look, and I think there's a learning aspect for all of us to do in that as well.
When we did the COVID kind of pivot across, all our team, we had to actually reteach them how to present.
Wow.
Just because actually connecting through this medium, you lose so many other things. And working in athlete mental health, you have to connect, with your audience. You have to make sure you're really dealing with the issues. Even though we've got a training system, and we have this World First platform, we're still operating, and suddenly we got thrust into, we can only do it this way. So you can see that speakers might struggle in that environment, but yeah, it's a relearning of how to make that connection.
Yeah, I think I've worked in event technology for a number of years, and obviously I work with Init Live, who I'm here with, but I also do a lot of work with virtual events as well. And I think that what's happened is a lot of event tech suppliers have had to pivot very quickly. And these guys on air have done a fantastic job, as you can see from what they've provided for this event. But this is a solution that would have taken years and years to develop, and they've done it in the space of almost weeks to actually provide the service to the industry. So I think that there's a lot more development to happen. And I think that you'll find that within another year or so, that the whole virtual event environment would have come on another 10 years. And that the whole experience of attending an event and having the digital twin working alongside it will really enhance the event so much more. And if anything, this horrible time we've been through actually in the end will take us forward 5 or 10 years. And you know, I think that events will be in a far stronger position after this time.
Just an example of something I saw about 3 or 4 weeks ago, completely different sector, but it was almost like chat roulette. So they in between the sessions, they had maybe like 15 minutes, and you were somebody was thrown at you for 2 minutes, and you had to make the connection, and then somebody else it was all randomized. So that was brilliant because people were actually forced to talk to you, which was, you know, it wasn't that kind of I'll sidle up to you by the tea. You know, and so I ended up speaking to people I may not have spoken to otherwise, or been able to speak to, made some really good connections. That was absolutely fantastic, I have to say. So stuff like that. There is probably ways of imaginative ways to get that going. I think, you know, Nick's referring to that leap forward of ideas and people being creative. It always happens in a crisis, right? And I think that will probably inform, as Josh said, if this is a starting point, it's great already. Imagine what it's like in 2 or 3 years' time.
Yeah, I think once data becomes involved and organizers start taking data in, forming algorithms and making sure that those sort of the roulettes they throw at you, that they are really the people you want to see. At the moment, obviously, they haven't had time to really dig that deep, but certainly that's around the corner.
Without being too, sorry.
I was just going to say, crisis kind of becomes that, you know, that very informed opportunity. So suddenly we've got an opportunity to explore the stuff that already existed and take it much, much further.
Yeah, great. Pick up as well one of Diana's points before is, you know, it's almost an easier sorting mechanism, because if you're looking for contacts, you're probably looking for either interest reasons or benefit reasons, both ways. And this mode, certainly through the meeting room and then over to LinkedIn, as Griselia was saying, that's much easier to sort through and find the conversations that you want to have. And that, as I say, that could be you just bump into someone, which I certainly missed as well, of just having a chat to break up the day, and you just find an interesting person. Then there's finding the people who you can help and they can help you, whether it's now into the future, which is obviously another, you know, fiscal reality of what we're doing at these things. So if that enables, or that this hybrid new world as we're progressing enables us to sort through, find more connections, to realize who we want to go to a deeper level with those connections and build those deeper relationships, I think that's just makes sense as well, and probably flies in the face of what a lot of the talk has been over the last couple of years of, I still of the belief that if you're going to cut big deals and get really important things done, there's got to be that relationship, you know, where you're touching and feeling and understanding the nuances and, you know, going through the dark times and having the happy times and experiencing them together. So if this connection allows more connections and a quicker understanding of where the value chain is going to be, happy days, long may it continue.
Paul, you've run lots of events. How do you see this as a sort of perfect platform that we're going to have both? That is the future. We're going to have, when we can be back live, we will be live, but what a great complement something like this will be to those environments. So we're getting both.
Yeah, if I speak with my Gigabox hat on for a second then, when everything hit and like everyone else, we had lots of live events in the diary and all gone within 36 hours. And then it was a question of pivoting Now, we're fortunate we've got a long background going back to 2009 in live streaming. So it was a relatively straightforward pivot for me to talk to those clients and say, look, we can do this. We'll do it in a different way. Now, we've still gone through a massive steep learning curve, even leaning all on the combination of the live streaming expertise of my tech team, but also of my previous background in TV sports broadcast. So we've been able to bring those two together. And as you're witnessing some of that learning here, and Dennis has pushed, I introduced the quiz today. Did any of you do the quiz? No, somebody won a crate of champagne.
Yeah, no,
so.
that was me. I won it.
Did you win it, Toby?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Play to you. We'll be round to yours when all this is over. But it's been interesting how we were talking there about we've pushed the boundaries, then we've pushed them again, and this thing you were just talking about how Dennis came along and looked 17 miles into the horizon and says, I want to do that. And we've been able to, running 2 streams, running all the content and all of the tech that goes into it, as all of you know from being involved in events. There's a lot in there. So I think we will end up with this, Nick used the phrase I think, that, the digital twin. There'll be, and I also think that the premium ticket will be the live ticket, because I think we're going to have restrictions in event spaces. For a long time, we've got a client who has a 450-seater, a theatre-style venue that's been closed, obviously, since March. They did the 2-meter that we had here in the UK originally, 2-meter test. They went from 450 to 52.
Wow.
And that's clearly not sustainable, is it, for anybody, whatever your event? And even now with the 1.5 plus, we're still in or the 1 meter plus, they're still looking at 108 people max in that room. So I think we're going to have that premium ticket, being at the event, the things that you were talking about, Toby, about how you want to, bump into people, meet people, be a coffee machine sidler, if that's what we need to do, you're going to pay more for that. And then there'll be the digital version online.
Yeah, I think there's so many factors that are coming up from this, for sure, that we've all learnt. Nick, if I could just ask you, looking at sort of today's content, what have you enjoyed?
I've got to be really honest. I've got a cluster of migraines at the moment, so I'm in a brief window now. But my whole world's been a haze for this morning, so I haven't actually seen.
You're enjoying this moment, though.
Yes, this is the highlight, without doubt.
I've got a question in from the audience, and I know we're keen to kind of engage with the audience. I haven't pre-read this, so I'm relying on David, who one of our production team, that he's pre-screened this, because I'm going to read this live. David, here we go. Does the panel feel that each of us as delegates need to promote major event summits moving forward on the basis that these events are so important to us as a sector and an industry, and providing that promotion ourselves to a wider audience?
Yeah, I think that's one of the crucial things. Influencer marketing for events. I think it's down to the organizer to perhaps look at trying to work with a software provider who actually do it for them, but to provide your attendees with digital assets which they can then share on LinkedIn. So I'm going to this event, click here, have a discount of 10%. Things like that would certainly help push the numbers. And especially as events are now open to everyone. There's no travel restrictions. If we're going digital and we're going to go twin or hybrid, whatever you want to call it, then yeah, definitely I think that organisers need to look at their communities and get them out there as their marketing army.
Toby, what stood out for you over the last 3 days, or even today particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for me, it's as I said before, it's been very much a learning thing for us to really kind of understand this industry and how best that we're going to connect with it with our systems. We've got a very specific piece of kit. It's going to do a number of things, and who do I talk to get that going? And that's really what I've been trying to understand. But also, really just sort of understanding the different perspectives of an event and all the things that go into actually managing an event. I mean, I was fortunate to sit in the presentation with the drone championship on the first day, That's not, our drones are supposed to sit up in the air for hours and not go anywhere. Their drones are tiny things that go around, whiz around tracks really, really fast. The complete opposites of what we do. But it was really fascinating to hear how they were planning their events, how they were planning to expand that, their events across the world. Ironically, by providing a digital twin version, and that's what they're doing. They're doing a virtual version as well as the live event, and they'll be running that into the years to come. So yeah, a lot of that kind of the planning for post-COVID, had a lot about data, how we use data, how we use it safely with GDPR, and I've had a lot about staffing and how to bringing staffing back from not just from a future events, but currently right now with COVID and how you manage that staff. Yeah. So there's been an awful lot for me to kind of get to grips with, just to understand the market, as well as to understand how we approach it.
And Josh, what stood out for you?
I think it's the enablement of the content exchange, Diana. Now that's probably a fluffy nothing statement, but let me explain what I'm meaning is, if you're thinking about what we're doing here and the content is a conference, so networking, education, etc., and then how is that going to evolve how we engage with conferencing content, and then thinking about that in the modes of other future events, because all events are a content exchange. And then the important thing is how we're consuming that content. And the expectation, exactly as Nick was saying before, is there's multiple different ways, but there's a bigger than that. There's an expectation of consuming in multiple different ways. So I think the businesses that are going to be born out of necessity and then capitalize on the opportunity are going to be smarter to actually widen the scope. And Paul was referencing is, I can see it, MEI event next year is if you've got to pay premium to be there. But then there's going to be another stream that there'll be 500 people or 1,000 people or more people that are engaging in this way. So, I mean, that's the challenge for the event operator and also the partners to contribute, because I think one of the things we're learning about content as well is the participants or the watchers want to be more than that. They want to affect it. They want to be part of it. They want to touch it. They want to feel it. And then capturing all of that, I think, is going to be the ones that get that right. Is really going to be the art form. And that's going to drive better businesses, better outcomes, and better experiences, I think. So to the point of where's that going to come from, I think the best products, the best events are always listening to the people they're targeting, because they're a key stakeholder. We're trying to sell to them, I guess, in that event content exchange parlance, but they're actually the key stakeholder. So involving the members or the people who are wanting the ticket or the experience, I think is going to be more and more critical, and the smart businesses will do things to capitalize on that.
I think one of the things going on from that, Josh, is that actually for organisers, it's not going to be easier to keep the online audience. If anything, you've got to keep them more engaged. When you're on a show floor at an event, you've got these chats, you've got the aisle chats, but when you're actually online, everything else is going on around you, which will take you away from the event itself. So if anything, the organisers have to up their game even further to make sure they're keeping the eyes on the screen, and making sure that the opportunities that the sponsors and that the attendee are looking to actually achieve are being achieved. So it's
Absolutely
a busy time ahead.
Agreed.
Because you're going to have a thing that tells you you've got 120 attendees in an event. You go, great, we had 120 people looking at our presentation, but how many of them are actually trying to look after the kids or whatever, listening to the phone or typing an email? So much. I mean, not that I would do any of that, but just that whole thing that you just don't know what the engagement's like, really, and it's only through that interaction that you get. And so if you can find a way to push that, so that you're really understanding, how many people are really engaging with the event, that's when you know that you've really probably engaged your audience.
We're about to move into our last 10 minutes of this brilliant chat, and I hope that the audience are enjoying it as well. We've got some time for a few last questions if you want to send those in to us. You can do that in the Q&A area. what I've been asked to do is to try and get some actionable insights from us. So that's one of the things that comes back. So things that people can actually take away and do as a result of these last 3 days. So perhaps open it up to the floor and ask each of you to perhaps provide one or two or more, if you like, nuggets of actions that you're going to do as a result of this conference, and they might well be ones then that others can share.
I was going to suggest there that one of the things that jumped out as an actionable insight was in that solutions provision space, which is what I got triggered by through the whole event, was that it is going to take a lot more effort from us to connect with people, because you do have to stay engaged. So it was more about, how can we not be lazy because it's a screen and it's not a room? And how can we take the information and actively connect with everybody in the event? And, taking also that thread of how can we initially promote that reconnection back into the event, is to take the content from here to network that content, and maybe to come back in through MEI and the other doorways that we're working with, to be able to do something with the content, not just talk about it. And I guess that's something that I think about in lots of conferences. I mean, I spoke at 19 different events in the space of 6 months, and quite often it's, what will people do next? Is it going to be useful? And I know that's something we're going to do with our 2 panels, is offer a white paper back into MEI to say there's something here that people can do something with. So I think for me, that key point is, what will be actionable content, and what can we do to not be lazy about it because it's an online event, and how can we make sure we stay connected and we actually do something with it?
Is it a case of perhaps just hearing from what you just said there, Graziella, that so this is a an annual conference, if you like they would be if we went to a live event, but what about we up the game and then start having them monthly, bi-monthly, however it is, just to update the information and keep those conversations going and more relevant?
I think that people get busy and there's lots of pressure on us, because I don't know about everybody else, but our entire platform is online. We're servicing all our clients online, and then you add to it the consistent changes of everything you've got to try to make it 2 different things. I think the annual event's really important, and if there was a way to interconnect around the pods of information that were coming out, I'm not sure what that should look like, because I don't want to direct that, but I think that there must be some way of kind of forming that connected relationship back into post-event actions, whether it's around, each of, FIBA presented something, Motorsport presented something. Okay, so there's a showcase of things that are coming up. Maybe it's more quarterly than it is monthly.
Yeah.
There's a movement, because I think there's a need for us to keep the connection, the human connection that we would otherwise get. And this is a wonderful way to get the whole world coming in. But how do we capture that intimate connection that we need to trigger the next thing from the event to an action that's going to breed business forward, get us all working in a different medium?
Josh, what do you think?
I think
Let's have some takeaway, guys. Come on, let's have some actionable things we can do. What can we propose?
Absolutely nailing it through everything I've heard her say. I think one of the actionables that I've got is I'm the convener of the technology subgroup as part of the MEI membership, which Toby is part of. And the immediate thing we were grappling with is there's 20 members that want to be part of it, which is magnificent. And then we're on a Zoom call, and the first agenda that we were going to have, or the first meeting and the agenda items we were going to have, went out the window when it was like, well, how are we going to manage and provide value to 20 people on a Zoom call? We're not. So the intent of, and what I've seen here, I'll be saying to Dennis and Andy is, well, can we use that platform for our tech subgroup? So there's better interaction to, one, fuel our interaction as a tech subgroup, internal. 2, provide feedback and insight to MEI to improve their service offering, internal. And then how do we as an MEI group become thought leaders for our expertise within the wider market to drive fiscal outcomes external? So I think that's a key point and something that I'll be taking on, because what's loud and clear is the content is still king. Got to be smarter around the content, but you cannot lose sight of the relationships and the importance around that to facilitate different conversations to drive value.
Toby, what have you got to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm probably going to be doing some probably more back to basics stuff. Oh, terrible phrase. But more around kind of looking at the content that I missed. So going, the platform's open until the 12th. And what I really want to do, because I want to do this internally, but what I'll be doing is sharing it with Andy as well, is the meetings I had from it and what the outcomes were. So just kind of real basic, this is what happened, this is what the outcomes were, it's driven us in this direction. And that might be pound notes and pence, it might be some business that's generated, but equally it could be, well, actually now we're looking at event X, which we weren't in that market before. So that's a tick for us.
Just before, I know you're keen to come in, Graziella, I am going to take my leave for reasons which will become apparent because somebody else is going to be sat in this seat in about 4 minutes' time. But I'll leave you with one actionable insight before we hear from Nick. So we've got a huge book of learning that we've taken from the event in terms of the technology and how we've employed it and how we can do other things with the content. So I'm going to be working on that. But I just want to say too, I know the conversation will continue for another 4 minutes or so. Thank you for letting me be part of it, and I'll look forward to catching up with you all soon.
Thank you, Paul.
I just had a quick idea there, Paul. That was brilliant. But just a really quick idea was that why not? Okay, everybody's going to be interacting with the content. Why couldn't there be a poll under the content, and then you just enter your name and your business? You've listened to it. Here's something you got from it. Here's an idea that you had with that, and that sort of filters back through MEI. But it's also a way of capturing the knowledge, so it doesn't just go into the ethers, because that's the thing I'm trying to kind of get to. And we've actually, in this environment, we can go back to something, really listen to it, and add that thought-provoking, piece of content that we want to add to it, and interact with that business or that forum, and you can kind of see all the businesses that have interacted. What about that?
I think so many things here, isn't there, that can be now in hindsight. This is the first one, so you can look back and you can take so much from it to just keep adding that value. But Nick, what were your thoughts?
I think in terms of for organisers, I think as I'm sitting here for In It Live, COVID has made us pivot, and we've pivoted directly to actually help COVID programs. So we're actually providing our solution for them. But in terms of the volunteer communities, I think it's really important to keep those communities engaged. How you do it, I know we had one of the guys from the on our panel yesterday, Stephen Bordeaux, and he'd actually got his volunteers to start volunteering for other programs, but just to keep them all together to make them work elsewhere. So I think that's one key. I think in terms of the whole digital event, virtual event side of things, I think what organisers have to understand is that they don't have to have an all singing, all dancing event. You have a brand, an event brand, and you can segment that brand, and you can have different events happening every month or so, which are completely focused on a niche. So the whole thing around thought leadership is you really, really hone in and you build those communities for the small niches that your event serves overall, which in no doubt about it will improve the quality of the content when you come to the main event at the end of the year, because you'll find some absolute stars within your own community who haven't had the opportunity to speak, who will then come to the fore. So I think in terms of organisers moving forward, and looking how they can use digital, really enhance it, and don't be frightened of it. Look to try and get a platform that you can develop and have a 12-month license with, and then have a number of events throughout the year. And just that in itself will make your actual digital offering at your major event 10 times better, which in turn will lead to more revenues and more eyeballs staying on the site.
I think that's what's sort of becoming apparent, because if I think back to the session that I did yesterday with the State of Victoria and Event Scotland, they were very much saying that to keep everyone interested, to keep the volunteers, to keep the supporters, they did a lot of digital work, but also what was important to them is they would pick up the phone and phone people, as well as emails and stuff. So they were using the digital area that we've got, the platform that we've got, but also that personal touch as well was something that they were really focused on engaging with. And I think that summarizes what is needed. We need a bit of everything, don't we?
Yeah, totally agree.
Graziella, so you, there's lots of things here that we can look at to take us forward. And I think there's some very good starting points, but overall, have you enjoyed it?
Overall, I've been thrilled with it. I mean, I've really enjoyed listening to all of the content. I've enjoyed the speakers, I've enjoyed the interactions, and I've just enjoyed seeing MEI take on the challenge of putting together an event like this, bringing people together when we really needed it, and to have so much both connectivity before the event, after the event, even this kind of chat forum, I think gives so much hope for how we can actually springboard and use that. Everyone's using that wonderful phrase, post-COVID pivot, back into being able to work with what we've got in this environment and the way the event's kind of shown us what we can do into a much bigger world. And I can only say thanks to MEI for having done that, because I think it's a huge feat to have put together the platform that they have.
It's certainly, I don't think it's been easy for anyone, but it's you know, there's been some areas where we know we've got to do some extra work on, but fundamentally, Josh, what you're seeing is the future, and it's really, really positive.
Yeah, completely agree. Just the options, and providing more people with more options and more content, and insightful content. As I think I said yesterday, long may it continue. And I think in a lot of ways this is pushing the barrow, and will be changing, or a line in the sand for a number of other events that we've been going to. If, like everyone else, I've probably in the last 3 months, I've seen more webinars than I can possibly poke a stick at. And I'm not sure how much of the content I'm actually taking in. But this one, without doubt, has been completely interactive. More significantly more so. So it's not just looking at a screen, which we're doing more than we have in the past anyway. So it's a bit of a grind. But when there's opportunities to duck in and out and touch in, touch out, more opportunities for starting a conversation elsewhere, then I think this just bodes well for the future of this event.
Absolutely, that's great, thank you. Now we're nearly at the end of our discussion point. I'm sad to tell you it's gone so quickly, but we can take so much away from that. So I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us. It's been great to meet you. But before we go, we'd just like to reintroduce another guest to the panel just to end the day. And of course, it is our CEO from MEI, Dennis Mills. Dennis, you've probably heard some of the conversations that have been going on. How are you feeling right now?
It's been breathtaking, to be quite honest. We came up with this idea about this sort of end of day panel fairly late in the process. And I think, it's all been great, but I think the general feedback that these end of day panels have almost been the star of the show, right? Because I think as Josh was illuminating, you've all illuminated, it's been a very rich content day. And perhaps just this slow it down, reflect, fill in some of the gaps. Graziella was talking about, the action-orientated points about bringing papers, but you've all just brought so many different dimensions to it. So whilst I've loved everything, but we get the privilege of interacting with sports organizations every day, the surprise star of the whole show has been the end of day panels. And Dana, I can only thank you personally for, eloquently conducting the orchestra as you were doing just now and drawing out from people. It's a real skill. And to you as the people that have contributed during the whole event, as well as this end of day, I think you've been amazing. And maybe it's given us a bit of time to think. Maybe, it's just created a different environment. I think Nick was saying, with busy distractions everywhere. And Josh was saying, I think yesterday, Josh, I understand that, we've managed to fit things around it. We weren't getting on aeroplanes and having that dead time around everything, and the time zone issue, and feeling tired when you get home. I mean, eaten all the wrong food, drunk all the wrong things, come on with a big smile, but a little bit tired. So I think, I just, we're going to do a debrief. We almost don't know where to start. We're going to have to break it down into technology, content, pace. There's a bit of an issue around pace, scope, But I think great credit to all of you who've taken part. You've been utterly amazing. So do you want me to move on down to a couple of final remarks to make, if you don't mind? So just some stats. We're looking at the data. We are about 20 people, you can work the maths out, from 1,880, whatever it's, 1,980 people. Sorry, get my maths right, 1,180 people have signed up. We think we've had 65 countries that we've identified so far that have taken part. And we're working out the division between sports orgs and the rest of it, but the numbers are off the scale. Absolutely. Numbers don't always matter, but the quality of the organizations and the level of decision maker, not always the seniority, but people with their hands on the lever to get things done, has been absolutely extraordinary. I will obviously say now publicly thank you to the people that have sponsored and helped the event, even though it's in the showcase. Obviously, we produced this in association with EY. Thank you to our loyal friend Steve Ravel, who's been posting stuff on this session from Rapiscan. We've been working with them now for, actually, I think we've all lost count, 10, 11 years or whatever, smashing every major events contract we go for around the world. Very proud to be working and being supported by S2 Division and Foamhand here as well. Identity Group have stepped up, and great to see the Department of International Trade and Gold Coast all giving us support. There's a lot of work here to be done, and without those people, we really would absolutely struggle. We've had a big network of media partners. I hope they got value about it as well. A lot of their activities came screaming to a halt, so at least we were able to give them some content. And obviously, you know, we took not a risk. We looked at the exhibiting and the networking, the rest of it. I would argue we have some fantastic tools there, probably not fully used by people. So I think one of you was making the point about, I think it's yourself, Nick, about our role that we need to get involved to promote it. And, you know, obviously when there's so much going on in 14 weeks, we probably, you know, have some work to do to drive people's attention and to use some amazing tools that are on the platform. So it's been good, but I think we could do better, like in many other areas as well. Finally, what on earth can I say to the Call Pete team that have pulled this together in 14 weeks? We walked out of our London office on the 20th of March with some flip charts and some ideas. And we went to the crazy guys from Events Air, Gigabox, Cyrox, and Global Event Production and said, and in fact, it was Paul from Gigabox who said last night, we were using an analogy, he said, you know, it was like building the first plane that was going to fly, you know. And, you know, really interesting to put it together, pushing the frontiers. But it's been an immense journey. And we're all very grateful for the people that put this platform together, managed the production, and made this happen. There are ideas in life, and there's getting stuff done. And they have certainly in the get it done thing. It will improve. It will be better. We know what needs to be done. We welcome your input. But it just leaves me to sign off with a thank you to them. And we're going to roll a video to say the summit is closed straight after this video. Thank you once again. And the content will be available from Monday for the rest of the week. It will be from Monday. Over to you. Let's go.